Welcome to Bounce Off, everyone, the number one SlamBall podcast worldwide. I am your host, Sam Roberts. If you want to find me on social media to talk all things SlamBall, just look up Quantum Roberts. That's Quantum Roberts on Twitter, or whatever you call it now, Instagram, and even TikTok, where we're posting some clips from the show and from other, interviews and things that we do. Today we're recapping last night's SlamBall action, including your headlines: slashers cut through competition, good stoppers win games, hurt stoppers lose games, and offense is getting smoother. We're going to go through the 3 games that happened last night, including the wins. So if you don't want to know, if you still want to watch last night's games, don't listen yet. Wait until you've watched the games, then come here for the analysis. And we'll do a quick preview for tonight's matchups. And of course, we'll be back tomorrow with a recap and review of the night before as well. My mouth is struggling to start today. Late one over here in Scotland watching SlamBall, including getting notes done. Bed around 6:30 a.m. And it is currently 9:50. So, my mouth doesn't want to move. But it has to, because we've got 3 games to talk about. And we start with the Buzzsaw versus Wrath. This match ended 42-34 in favour of the Buzz. The main thing I want to talk about to start off with is the lack of transparency from the league with regards to injuries. Now, I reached out to them earlier this week and asked, is there going to be any sort of injury update coming out for the public? And they said, we are working on it. And I guess working on it means we will haphazardly announce it during the broadcast this week. So, basically, we start the game. They announce the starting 5 for the Wrath. And I don't know in the first quarter if they address who's injured or what's going on, right? So, for those who don't know, last week, after night 1, it was then announced that Trey Landers was hurt for the Wrath and Christian Gray was hurt for the Wrath. And then their last match of the weekend, Ty McGee and also Stephen Julian III went down with injuries, right? And that wasn't addressed pre-game. They then eventually addressed during the second quarter that Christian Gray's injured, Ty McGee's got a concussion, and so he's being kept out for a little bit longer, and Stephen Julian III's also injured. I don't remember them giving specifics on those other two, on Gray and Julian III, but they definitely said McGee is in concussion protocols, and at this stage it's just being extra safe. Whether or not that means he comes back for games like throughout this weekend, I don't know. I would doubt it. I think concussion protocol tends to be like 10 days plus, depending on how you're responding to the rest. So expect him maybe next week. They mentioned that Trey Landers is back when he eventually checks into the game. I think they said it was like a leg injury of some sort, which is why he was out. So he's now back in the lineup. But there is no explanation as to what happened to Julian III and to Christian Gray. More so, the way that the injury replacements was explained to me from Coach Hernando Planels in my first interview of this season, right? The idea is that the league has what's called a taxi squad. And the taxi squad is 4 players who are available at any one time. And they can be plugged into teams that have injuries, so long as the team with the injuries sends one of their players back to the taxi squad. The point of this being, if you have a really good player, you might not want to give them up and send them to the taxi squad if they are hurt, right? Because it could be that they're only out for a couple of days and then you want to bring them back. But if they're going to be hurt for 3 weeks, you need a replacement player for that position, so you should give them up. Now, this is something I'm going to ask the league about today, I think, because this is very confusing to me. Christian Gray's no longer on the Wrath roster page, which kind of implies that he has gone to the taxi squad. But then the squad page for the Wrath is now up to 9 players, which is 2 more than you're allowed. And next to Ty McGee and Julian III, it says brackets inactive. So are they on the taxi squad? Who's taxiing on the Wrath, right? I need an answer to that, because right now it's not exactly what I was expecting from the league in terms of substitutions and injury replacements. So I need a clarification on that. In terms of making it clearer for the audience what's going on, I think it's as simple as every other sport that ESPN carries, which is when you bring up the starting five on the chyron, on the graphic, in the little bit at the bottom, you just say, if for example, Darian Slade replaced Christian Gray in the starting lineup on Sunday, right? So you could just say Slade replaces Christian Gray in the starting lineup, brackets, leg, right? That's all you need to do. And then the commentary just reads that out and like can maybe expand if they've got scope to. But to start a game, you should acknowledge who's playing and who's not, and a little bit of the why. You do not need to do that. You can just say out injured, and that's, legally fine. There's no legalities regarding being transparent with a sports league. Maybe there will be with the betting side of things that they're pushing very hard this week. But there is a certain level of transparency that you want from a league in terms of how its players are doing. And right now we're not getting that. And so I just think you could simplify it way more. Graphic, blank and blank are replaced by blank and blank in the starting four tonight. And that's it. And then you can explain. Anyway, that's like my big gripe for today. Is yet again more injury shadiness, right? That's where I'm at right now. I just want to know, because I picked the Wrath as my team and now they're filled with injuries. I just want to know when I can expect them back, okay? In terms of this actual game, Wrath and Buzzsaw, there is some good stopper play early on. Neither team can get an easy basket. I believe the first quarter ended in a single digit like play. Yeah, it was 8-7 in favor of the Wrath after the first quarter. And then by the second quarter, both teams only scored 5, so it was 13-12. So early on, both teams are really struggling to score. From the Buzz standpoint, it's a combination of some poor decision making and the fact that Sean Stith is doing really well at blocking shots at the rim. The theme of today is, as I said, good stoppers win games. Injured stoppers, exhausted stoppers, and bad stoppers lose them, right? And the theme of today is stoppers who can't handle more than one player at once. And we'll explain that as we go through. But the Buzzsaw were struggling to score. They were getting a lot of open drives to the rim or getting around Sean Stith in the air, and then they were just unable to convert them. And that reared its ugly head throughout the night for the Buzz as well. On the other end, Tyquan Scott, the Buzz stopper, he was doing really well defensively as well. But what you have to consider with that is that he is also, by and large, just facing single man, one-on-one drive to the basket offense. Because, as was explained over commentary, James Lee, who is the acting head coach for the Wrath, given James Willis, their head coach, got ejected and suspended last weekend. James Lee says, "Oh yeah, they told the broadcast we're running 10 plays instead of our usual 20 because we're missing so many guys." And I think an added thing is because the head coach isn't there, and so they're running 10 plays. They're basically just running the whole game through Darian Slade and Nick Parks. The box score for this game has like those guys playing 17 plus minutes in the game. And I just do not, I think it was more than that. I think it was way closer. Like Sean Stith played 19 minutes of the 20-minute game, and I think that's way more realistic for Darian Slade. So yeah, both stoppers had opportunities to get stops because the offense wasn't playing at a very high level. It was a lot of just drives to the basket, and then when they were making it, some of them were like missing shots. Like the Buzz had a couple denied by the rim. The Wrath had a couple of finesse plays that they couldn't quite finish. Right, Darian Slade's being asked to carry the offense a huge amount in terms of distribution, mainly with a running buddy in Nick Parks, but also in terms of scoring in his own right with shots from the outside because he hits 1 of 2 from 4, I think. And also some layups, which is really fun to see in SlamBall, to see how you can do a layup to get around the stopper. The timing has to be perfect because they can goaltend as much as they want if it's a shot from inside the tramp. So it's an interesting, fun play to see. And on the other end, Jamal Barnes Jr. was a big focus of the offense in the first half for the Buzz. And that was giving mixed results because while they were still in this game and he was still playing reasonably well, he did give up 8 turnovers in the first half. And he was looking a little bit slower than you would expect. The Wrath do really well in the first half, not giving away a single foul until there are 0.8 seconds left in the entire half. And I think that what we're about to talk about owes to the idea of exhaustion that Sean Stith might be starting to feel this game. Because it's been physical. Yes, he's been playing well at the rim to stop the Buzz from getting too many points. Yes, the Buzz have missed a lot of shots, but that doesn't stop it being very physical in the air and a taxing thing to have to take on your body as the stopper who's meeting people up at the rim. And, I think he got tired by the end of the first. The reason I say that is because with 0.8 seconds left, he gives away a foul inside the Tramps. Contact in the Tramps, unnecessary contact in the Tramps, however you want to relay it, but he fouls. And then on the face-off attempt, they don't even get an opportunity to try the face-off because Sean Stith enters the Tramps before the offensive players started their run-up, which is an illegal move. You need to wait until they start their movement before you can then enter the Tramps on the defensive end. And so instead of, instead of ending the half going, we didn't give away a single defensive penalty. We've kept all of the points we could give away on that end. You're ending it giving up 2 points, silly, and instead of being up a nice amount in terms of it would have been 4 points they were up. No, sorry, it wouldn't have been. Yeah, it would have been 4 points they were up. They end the half up 21-19. Okay, Stith's been great, but the mistakes, you assume that he struggled playing a full game with this physicality and with also being asked to do some stuff offensively as part of it as well. When the second half begins, straight away it's Jamal Barnes Jr., JBJ. He is, after a sluggish first half where he was being expected to do a lot and not doing it, he starts the second half with big tackles, big hits, with big buckets, and getting steals in the open court, which basically means that for the first 5 possessions, it's Jamal Barnes Jr. versus the stopper. Jamal Barnes Jr. taking out a guy. Jamal Barnes Jr. going at the defense as quickly as he possibly can and just causing them to have to handle a lot of pressure from someone being physical with them. And I think that energy versus exhaustion is a big thing, especially as you enter a second half. And if you can set that tone of, we're coming at you, we're going to be aggressive, we're going directly at the basket, it could be a tone setter for the defense as well, and they don't want to have to deal with that. They don't want to have a guy going at them constantly, and it puts them off from trying to get in the way. Some of that doesn't necessarily happen with Sean Stith. He does a good job of disrupting the Buzzsaw play by just being around the rim, and I think that comes from the physicality he was giving back to them. He got called for a couple of contacts in the Tramp multiple times throughout the game, and I think if he's that physical, it puts off teams going after him on the offensive end. Bless me, my goodness, sneezing on a Saturday. What's life come to? So they're not completing plays. The Buzzsaw are not able to complete plays because Sean Stith, while he is getting more and more tired, is still a big physical presence, making himself known on the defensive end, and no one really wants to go at him. So if they do manage to get deep into a play the Buzzsaw, they're then throwing the ball away or getting an uncomfortable bounce, or it's 2 in the Tramp, and they're giving up the possession of the ball because they're not getting the timing down on how to get a score out of a play that they're running. Okay, both teams end up just going one-on-one with the stopper. Just the Buzz are like, the play's not working. The Wrath are like, we can't work together like this. Let's just go one-on-ones, drive straight at the stopper and see what happens. Stith is almost scaring them because a lot of them, like I say, bounce off into trying to set up a play instead. But the simplification kind of helps the Wrath a little bit, and they maintain that lead 29-25 after 3 quarters. But the problem is, we talked earlier, that Tyquan Scott is getting some stops because he is a good stopper. But if you're running a simplified offense, that by and large is just single man drives to the basket or one cut maneuvers. And that becomes a lot easier to deal with, especially when your playbook gets halved. So Scott's getting a lot of stops. He's got less to have to deal with on the defensive end than Sean Stith does playing against the Buzzsaw. And by the fourth quarter, it totally flips on its head. The offense of the Buzz just has too many options, whether it's Jamal Barnes Jr. driving or if they're going to do some maneuvering around the tramps. Either way, it's a lot for Sean Stith to have to keep up with in the air and around the trampoline, and he's largely doing it on his own. Versus at the other end, it's a lot easier to handle single drives from a team that's basically playing the entire game without any subs, and their only play is to run straight at the stopper. That is tiring, right? The Buzz are making passes around the hoop more. They're not getting all of them off right, but it's enough that Stith has to keep guessing and keep bouncing, keep his bounce alive in the tramp and just kind of exhaust himself, okay? And the amount of options that the Buzzsaw possess, or even just the idea that they possess those options, is enough to make life harder for Sean Stith at the stopper position. The game ends, like I say, with the Buzz all of a sudden taking an 8-point jump over the Wrath. And that's all down to the fourth quarter. In terms of the splits throughout the game, Wrath 8, Buzzsaw 7. Then Wrath score 13, Buzzsaw score 12. So the Wrath are still up by 2. And then it's Wrath 8, Buzzsaw 6. So the Wrath should now be up by 4 at the end of the fourth. We talked about that. And then in the fourth quarter, the Wrath get totally shut out defensively and they only score 5 points. Whereas on the other side, the Buzzsaw open up the floodgates against Sean Stith and they score 17. So in the fourth quarter, it's a 12-point flip, and that's just too much to have to handle. Buzzsaw go through. Don't know what happened to my voice there. Buzzsaw go through to the main event matchup. And they will face the winner of Slashers versus Rumble. And the Slashers win, 64-56. The Rumble are, after the first week and a half of SlamBall action, considered by far the worst team in the league. There was something going around Twitter, a report from someone who, no offense to them, I don't know your credibility and I'm not trusting your credibility right now, but they're saying that the locker room is turning against Coach Ken Carter. I'm saying that as total conjecture. It could be true, but I don't know the credentials of the person reporting it, so I'm not diving into that hugely, but I'm mentioning it here. And the Slashers are definitely the better team. But the Rumble, I will say, the Rumble are vastly improved in Game 3 versus Games 1 and 2. My unpopular opinion of the night, and it starts with Game 2 and it continues on into Game 3, is that this evening, 28th of July, highlighted the significance in stopper quality and the players that have a different level, like who is good and who is not good at that position. Or rather, who is elite and who is not elite in the league. So, from this game on, okay, we already talked in the first game that Taekwon Scott, a lot of his stops were coming from the fact that the Wrath didn't have many offensive options. Sean Stith was playing a good physical game in the air, but he got tired and the options that the Buzzsaw had caught up to him. Okay, from this game on, it is a sieve at the rim. It is nothing but flowing baskets for any play ran that isn't just a one-on-one dunk attempt, right? And if you compare that to the day before, with Gage Smith, Connor Hollenbeck, and Keenan Love, who are all adept at disrupting an offense that's being ran at them, and compare it to the guys we're going to get into who all struggled to keep up with, vibrant play that's more than just a single drive, there is a definite divide in the players that are elite and the players that are good. And they're all better than I'll ever be in my lifetime, but I'm just saying that this evening showed that difference. And the Rumble are possibly in the weakest position when it comes to stopper play. Their first round pick, the third overall pick, Bakari Copeland, looked lost in the first half at the stopper role. He eventually comes out with an ankle injury and gets replaced by Tamarick Fields, who's a much better offensive player at gunner and just ultimately cannot keep up with the play of being at stopper. if we look at the stats, the Slashers, they scored 19 points in that third quarter when Bakari Copeland went out and Tamarick Fields took over. But both of those guys, and Bakari Copeland in particular, were really struggling to keep up with any two-man game that the Slashers would run. We spoke the weekend before about the slashing or the cutting offense that the Slashers were trying to pull off around the base tramp, the bottom tramp right in front of the basket. And the idea that they're getting two guys cutting into there on any given possession, and that's a really hard play to run because it requires precise timing to not create a two in the tramp situation. And this evening, they did it really, really well. They pulled it off to perfection. And the question has to then be, is that because they're getting better at it and the league is improving? Or is it that they were going up against stoppers that aren't named Gage Smith and therefore are less adept at disrupting an offense like that? Either way, the biggest takeaway I have from the Slashers end defensively for their stopper and Amir Smith. Amir Smith is good. Amir Smith gets some really big blocks that then transfer into offense on the other end. But in this game, the thing that you notice, first of all, is that he is not adept at going, or he's not worried about going for LBRs. So loose ball retrievals, the main hustle stat in SlamBall, a combination of just generic rebounds and also gathering the ball after it's been blocked or deflected or whatever. This is the stat. And that sort of implies how much effort you're putting in defensively. And Amir Smith is not doing as much of that. The reason you notice this in particular against the Mob is against the Rumble. Excuse me. This is what happens when your sleep pattern's bad. The reason you notice this against the Rumble is that the Rumble's offense is predicated on taking shots from distance. And they did that in this game. To woeful effect. I don't know how they stayed in this when you look at their shooting numbers, given their play style is to shoot from distance. But it's to take shots from distance and then have someone cutting to the basket to get a rebound, okay? Which is a backup for if they miss. But if they start to make these shots, having someone immediately going for the rebound to, if they do miss, kick it back out for a second shot attempt that might go down, they are going to be a lot harder to deal with. And you'll need a stopper that's going to put in effort defensively to try and get there. And thus far, Amir Smith doesn't seem to show that. He is also struggling to deal with the improvements made by the Rumble. The Slashers are definitely better at running an offense around the tramps, but the Rumble have gotten better running a little two-man, even three-man game at times off the island. It's not perfect yet, but it's definitely vastly improved from how they were doing offense in the first weekend, right? And Amir Smith struggles with that as well. Any single island cuts, any mid-air alley-oops, they're all good. They will get you a score against these two stoppers. Anything that's a direct drive will get blocked. And I'm sort of calling this level 2 stopper awareness, right? They can see a guy running at them and they can stop that guy. But if another guy comes, or if three guys come, it's just not, they can't pay attention to all of that at once. And they get disrupted and discombobulated a lot easier, right? So that's my big takeaway in that sense. When it comes to the offensive end, this game is another coming out party for Tony Crosby II, for TC2. He has maybe two of the nastiest dunks in the season so far on Bakari Copeland in that first quarter and second quarter. Particularly the one-on-one, he just jumps higher, through the legs dunk over him, that's body to face, that was just harsh to watch looking back at it. But is maybe the nastiest play of the whole season so far. He also gets a move down that I was talking about yesterday as Keith McGee's bounce down into the tramp and yet still trying to get at the rim, which is hard to do. Just the physics of it in SlamBall seems complicated to bounce the ball off the tramp but then still get enough height from a side or top tramp to reach the rim. Tony Crosby II does it effortlessly in this game. And so that adds another string to his bow, because primarily what happens if an offensive player bounces into the top or side tramp, they're then looking to make a play around the island or in the bottom tramp. And so a stopper times their jump in relation to when that bounce is made. And if Tony Crosby II, or we talk about, like, say, Keith McGee, can regularly get a bounce off into one of the tramps and yet still make it to the basket, then that totally disrupts any chance a stopper has of working out what the best decision is, whether it's to go straight one-on-one or to wait for a play to occur, because you just don't know. TC2 has another disrespectful, as commentary says, through the legs bounce down into the bottom for a dunk. The next possession, Amir Smith crushes someone with a block, like an incredible block. Again, he's not got the awareness that other stoppers have. He's not got the timing, but his just rage when he hits the ball is impressive. And that then translates to further offense, because TC2 gets, he jumps from side tramp sort of low and fast to the hoop. Does a 360 layup in the air, which Bakari Copeland comes out to in the air. TC2 misses the shot, but Bakari Copeland doesn't try to catch it in the air, and so TC2 just comes right back up, gathers the ball again in the air, so there's no foul, there's no like having possession twice, and he just lays it in. He was so exciting to watch in this game, and so exciting to watch on the night. Another person I want to make note of is Nathan Karsjan's coming in to play backup stopper minutes for the Slashers. And he's not phenomenal, but he's definitely, in this game, better at disrupting the offense coming from the Rumble and being a disruptor, like, defensively regardless. Not in the air. He's not as good in the air as Amir Smith, but he is better at disrupting with when to jump into the tramp, and he's putting more effort in on the LBRs, which is good against a team like the Rumble, who, as we've talked about, are looking to get those rebounds regularly. That's basically the game. The game is a lot closer looking back on it than I thought it would be. An 8-point win for the Slashers, which is just consistent scoring. And it comes down to TC2 being well above anything that the Rumble can handle, and the fact that from a defensive standpoint, their stoppers on the Rumble, well, their one stopper could not handle it at all, but then he comes out injured. He cannot handle more than a one-on-one play. He comes out injured. And then was he not able to handle it because he's injured? We do not know. And then his replacement is not as adept at the stopper position. They are definitely a more offensive-minded guy. So it doesn't go well for them. I do want to say that they look better, right? To lose a game by 8 points versus what was happening to them weekend one is a much marked improvement. Their offensive rebounding is still their strength. We talk about this as a thing that teams have to be better at, because if the Rumble start making shots, if they've already got the offensive rebounding down and they're making shots regularly, then it's a lot of scoring that you'd have to deal with, and second chance opportunities for scoring without them having to give up anything physically. The problem is their shooting is abysmal right now. They were 1 of 8 from 4-point range in this game. And I thought I was going to come to the end of this review and say, wow, their shooting's got so much better. But no, they were 1 of 8 from 4. And actually from 3-point range, they were 1 of 5. So a combined 2 of 13 from distance, whichever you want to refer to the distance as, is not going to cut it for a team that's trying to make shots and distance shooting their thing. So the Rumble looked better, but the thing they're trying to make their game does not work. The main event saw the Buzzsaw take on the Slashers in, I think, most people's 2-4 matchup in terms of power rankings. The Buzzsaw are definitely seen going into this matchup as the second best, and yet commentary was saying that Coach Planels was saying that the Buzzsaw are being overlooked. I don't know how that can be the case when the league and myself and every other person who wants to do power rankings is saying Buzzsaw are definitely second best. If the problem there is that we're saying second best, not best, you're not the team that's averaging 65 points per game, like, scored, right? And so there's something that one of the commentary team says, I forget his last name, but John, the former long snapper in the NFL, former NFL champion, he says sometimes there's a reason you don't get respect or something to that effect, right? Or that you're not getting respect, or you're being, whatever it might be, he says. And this game almost shows it, because the Buzzsaw lose 39-57. They lose by 18, but they actually go down 15-0 in the first quarter. Now, the argument could be rest versus rust. And I guess it was rust on this night, because the Buzz played in the opening game and then they have to wait until the main event, versus the Slashers, who have just played and then 10 minutes later they're on the court again, so they're still warm. But that's just an abysmal start, 15-0. Again, both team stoppers really struggle with the idea of a single cutting action. And the Buzz struggle a lot more, because we talked about Tyquan Scott in game 1 against the Wrath. He ate and got 10, or was it 10? It was definitely double-digit stops that he got in game 1. If you give me one moment. In terms of stops, yeah, he got 11 stops in game 1. And that's because he was dealing with a less mature offense, just one-on-ones straight to the basket, and not the ideal, and not anything that advanced. And that's why he was getting a lot of stops. The Slashers, as we talked about, are starting to perfect that shortcut bottom tramp two-man game, whether it be faking that shot or throwing a very high lob so that it's coming down as the stopper's coming down, which means that the secondary player is going up and whoever's making the pass is landing the tramp after the second guy has already jumped, which is a difficult timing thing to do. But the Slashers got it down, and so Tyquan Scott was getting eaten alive defensively when they were clicking with this. And then on the other end, Amir Smith is also struggling when the Buzz have got things put together. But that first quarter, the 15-0 run, Amir Smith put on a clinic in terms of blocking shots. He definitely did in the second half of that first quarter. But in the first half, it was just down to the Buzz getting open runs to the basket and missing them. Whether it was a layup or it was a dunk attempt, they were missing them with a very high, a very bad percentage. They've obviously gone 0% in this first quarter. But any opportunities that the Buzz were creating, it would result in a 2 in the tramp call and a turnover. So they are not getting the same timing down that the Slashers are getting on the offensive end. And Amir Smith, at least in the first quarter, is getting some really, really good blocks in and denying at the rim. Even if he's not disrupting their offense, he's denying at the rim. And those two things don't need to be, mutually exclusive, but they can be, and they are in this situation. But ultimately, it's that the offense for the Buzz was very poor in the first quarter, and the offense for the Slashers was starting to ramp up. Is this, again, like I said earlier, this two-person cut from both... Basically, they're cutting from both wing positions at almost the same time, with a slight deviation in start time, so that when one player gets into the tramp and the other guy's going, and they go up, the other guy's coming in just after them, so that it's not a 2 in the tramp situation, because as one's going up, the other's coming down type of thing, right? And maybe it's just that Tyquan Scott cannot do anything to disrupt that. Maybe there was no coaching answer to how to disrupt that. But it's certainly not worked against Gage Smith thus far. Is that because this offense is now starting to click, or is that because Gage Smith is a much better stopper than Tyquan Scott? I think that's the answer. But I also think that it's feasible that the Slashers have definitely improved on that offense since week 1. We will see tonight, because they're in action yet again. In terms of the Buzz scoring opportunities, it comes from very quick transition offense after a stop. And I think that they do need to be a high-energy team. These guys need to be the 7 seconds or less Suns in terms of scoring the basketball or scoring the slam ball if things aren't working out for them. It needs to be aggressive runs to the hoop, and it needs to be fast transition offense, similar to what the Mob are running at times. Okay, JBJ sprints at the stopper and looks like he's just going one-on-one. And as we've talked about, that's been really easy to stop. And they don't actually run a play, but he does have someone cutting from the side tramp as he's going. And even if you don't have a play, he just stares at his teammate. He just stares to the right. And that means that Amir Smith in the stopper position for the Slashers has to respect the idea that a pass is probably coming to the guy cutting. And it's just enough deflection that JBJ gets a really easy basket. And it can just be something as simple as that, just a look off, just something that makes the stopper question what they're doing and not think, I just need to block the guy, right? A big thing about this is old school stoppers versus new school technique. And back in the day, a stopper could just go straight up and down because they know that what's going to happen is a guy's driving straight at them and they just need to get in his way. Now, if they do that to one guy, they're opening up the basket very wide to a secondary option. And that's what tonight showed for guys who you would probably classify as an old school style stopper, but without an improved sense of timing. So Connor Hollenbeck of the Griffins is describing himself as an old school style stopper, but I think he's much better at reading a defense and reading where alternative players are coming from than Tyquan Scott is, than Bakari Copeland is, than Amir Smith is. But I will say out of those three names, I just said Amir Smith is the best of the three. But he also isn't having to play this full game, you know? By halftime, the Buzz have made a couple of bad decisions. They didn't give, like, the Slashers haven't given away a single face-off in the first half. But beyond that, they've not given away any bonus points because they've not had a face-off to begin. So the Slashers haven't given away anything by violations, right? The Buzz, on the other hand, they've given away 2 face-offs, one of which was a miss, the other one was a make. So, and then beyond that, they've given away 5 violations total. Okay, so minimum, they've given away 8 points. Realistically, they've given away, you know, 9, between 9 and 11 points on just defensive mistakes. And that's hard to come back from if your defense is struggling and if your offense is making mistakes in terms of the 2 and the tramp calls. To start the second half, the Slashers feel like they can take off Amir Smith. And why shouldn't they? They are up by halftime by 19, right? Their biggest lead of any game thus far. So they bring him out and they put in Nathan Karstjens, who played in the first game, but hasn't really played up until tonight. And what Karstjens, like we said, is good at is disrupting play and maybe distribution a little bit. He gets brought up a lot more than Amir Smith. If Amir Smith is coming up as part of the offense, it's to get a dunk. If Nathan Karstjens is, it's to set screens and do dribble handoffs, which is interesting, and I quite like that. He also starts shooting from distance, and you know, Nathan Karstjens ends up hitting 2 of 3, or maybe 2 of 4 from 4-point range. They're not pretty. They're ugly, but that's the best shooting percentage anyone's had from 4 thus far this season. So watch Nathan Karstjens as a guy who might all of a sudden be able to be a lights-out shooter for the Slashers. But he is getting attacked by JBJ, Jamal Barnes Jr., which, as I'm reading it, I've just realised that could be John Bon Jovi. So whichever you want to go with, Jamal. But Jamal Barnes Jr., JBJ, he's attacking Nathan Karstjens because he knows he can get points off of that. Because even though Karstjens is good at disrupting, I think if this is one of the things where he can disrupt a play, but he doesn't have the physicality to stop someone like JBJ flying at him midair, because he is a very athletic, very tricksy guy midair. He is, if this is the 7 seconds or less Suns in the Buzz, he is the Amari Stoudemire that you have to watch out for, okay? Even just throwing another option of another player is throwing off Tyquan Scott, right? So we talked about it on the other end. We talked about Amir Smith getting scored on because Jamal Barnes Jr. just looked away and gave the impression that there could be a play coming. That is also happening for the Buzzsaw defensively. The Slashers just need to look like someone might do something, and Tyquan Scott totally makes the wrong decision. The biggest thing I come out of this game thinking is he scared of anyone's drive to the basket? Because you have, like, Tony Crosby II is obviously someone you have to be aware of in the air. If he's running at you, he might just dunk on you. Tony Crosby II will run, and as soon as he starts running, Tyquan Scott's like, right, I need to get into the air. I need to meet him there. I need to jump. And then TC2 will just go to the island and make a pass. Or do a short bounce into the bottom basket, bottom tramp, and make a pass. And then Tyquan Scott is totally all over the place because he's gone, oh, there's a guy coming at me. I need to stop him. And then a second guy appears and he had no idea that he was coming. Or like I said, like the alternative to that he's really struggling with is Tony Crosby II drives, but here comes Bradley Laubacker from the left. Oh, I've got to watch out for Laubacker. Oh, Tony Crosby's dunked, because he can't keep up with more than one player. And this is a bad sign for a high draft pick stopper that's supposed to be your physical presence at the back, unable to contend with rudimentary offense beyond one-on-one play. And that's a tough thing to deal with. I think Tyquan Scott's the person who showed up the most tonight. I think the Wrath lost because Sean Stith is exhausted and made a couple of bad mistakes. I think the Rumble had an injury to their stopper, and their backup guy is not a stopper, but he's a big guy and they're hoping for the best. And Amir Smith shows that he can block ferociously and not get eaten alive as much by play. He's still not great at it, but Tyquan Scott looked lost. He looked like a deer in the headlights at times, trying to contend with the Slashers bottom tramp cutting offense, and it was harsh to look at. In terms of as the game goes on, John Schriffen on the call points out that maybe Tony Crosby II is getting away with walking on the island. I want to double check the rule book, but I'm pretty sure Schriffen's right that once you're on the island, you're not allowed to walk. You don't get a 2 steps as if you're in basketball. Once you're on the island, you have to come to a complete stop. You can't be running back and forth on it looking for an option, and that's what TC2 was doing. Not doing that exactly, but he was taking a couple steps. He wasn't landing flat. He was taking a couple steps and he was shuffling his feet. In the world of wrestling, you would say that he had a penguin shuffle going on. He's sort of hopping foot to foot, looking for something to happen. And the ref, the commentary's calling that out. Refs aren't noticing it if that's the case. The other thing is that, again, at one point, the Buzz end up going down 21. The Slashers are up by 21. So Nathan Carstens is getting a lot more playing time. It gets him practice. He's doing okay. He's good at assessing when to disrupt a play. He's good at assessing when to get in the air to try and make a stop. And like I said, he's able to run offense. He's not, from what we see from Nathan Carstens in the 2 games last night, he is not anywhere near the elite standard of stopper we've talked about. But in the same way that Vincent Bowman is a really good secondary option for the Ozone when not many teams have a secondary option at stopper, I think that Nathan Carstens is a really good secondary option for the Slashers. And if they want to start running a defensive strategy like the Ozone where you play Amir Smith in the first quarter, then Nathan Carstens in the second, then for half of the third, it's Nathan Carstens, and then from the second half of the third, throughout the rest of the game, Amir Smith comes back in the game. If you wanted to run that defensively, I think the Ozone have shown that can work. You just need to trust both of your guys, and so far it seems like they do. And because they're up so much, basically by the end of the game, everyone but TC2 is getting rest. Why is that a smart decision? I don't know. You just try to run up the score? Is it you just don't have an opportunity for him to come out? But if you're looking at the minutes per game, TC2 plays 18, but so does Amir Smith, and so does... that's wildly incorrect. That's definitely wrong. The minutes counting for the SlamBall stat site is very poor thus far, because it's telling me that Amir Smith, Tony Crosby II, and Brian Gentry all played 18 minutes, which is definitely not true. Tony Crosby II played 18 minutes for sure, and then Amir Smith played definitely less than 18 minutes because of the minutes that Nathan Carstens was taking. Brian Gentry is their 7th guy off the bench, and he 100% did not play anything more than 2 minutes of this game. Maybe 3 at most, and it says he played 18. So the minutes counting has to get better, guys. Come on. The scoring breakdown is really interesting because in terms of Slasher scoring, Amir Smith got 6, Tony Crosby got 12, Naradane James got 6, Alonzo Scott Jr. had 10, Bradley Laubacker had 9, and Nathan Carstens had 8. So if you're adding that up, you've got 36, 42, 51, and then an additional 6 points coming from fouls given away on the other end. And that's, I think, a big thing from this as well, was just the Slashers know they couldn't deal with some of the Buzzsaw offense, but the Buzzsaw were struggling even more to keep up with the Slashers in the bottom tramp, but also to not give away fouls. And that was difficult. So the Buzzsaw, I think they had a bad game. I don't want to say that they're because I think that was a terrible start from them. And going down 15-0. I mean, we saw the Mob come back from 12-0 in the first quarter the night before. But maybe it's the Buzz don't have as many weapons or options as the Mob have, which I think is accurate. But I don't think they're as bad as this 18-point loss suggests. I think they're better than this. I just don't know. I don't know what happened. Is it rest versus rust? We'll see. I then want to shout at commentary because... And I get it. These people have other jobs that they're doing in their lives, and I'm just a guy who's dedicating all of my free time to this sport. But you guys are the voices of the league, and they say something incredibly, incredibly silly, okay? So, Stormy Bonatoni says that the Slashers have let in a lot of points going into tonight. So, they're 3 games from weekend 1. They were averaging 65.6 points against per game. That's a huge amount of points to let in. She is right. That is a lot. And to finish out this game, where when she said it, they had only let in 29 points. So the Buzzsaw ended up scoring at least 10 in that fourth quarter. To only let in 29 points is a commendable achievement. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, but that's because, like, the reason that their points against is so high is that they've played the Mob twice. And those games ended with the Mob scoring 62 and then 72. And then the Slashers' next game was a really close loss to, or really close win over the Lava, 67-63. Okay, so that one, sure, their defense has gotten better. I think it's more accurate that the Buzzsaw were really slow to start and they couldn't score the baskets that they were creating for themselves. I don't think that's a sign of a elite defense from the Slashers' perspective. But then John Shriffin's called every game. So why is he then saying, I think the Slashers could challenge the Mob? Maybe they could. Maybe what we've seen develop in terms of their offense is definitely enough to challenge the Mob. But the reason that Stormy Bonatoni has just come out with, here is the insanely high number of points that the Slashers are letting in, is because they've played the Mob twice and they haven't looked close to beating them. So I need the commentary to be paying a little bit more attention to the league. I get that it's fast-paced. I get that you're new to this. I get that not everything is being presented to you perfectly. The scoreboard we just talked about, the minutes per game is a mess. Maybe there's lots of other things that are a mess. And this weekend thus far, they've been much better than the weekend previous in terms of explaining the game and creating a sense of legitimacy. But if there are only 3 games a night, last weekend there was a grand total of 12 games. Thus far, we've had a total of 18 games in the entire season. You can keep track of who's played who a little bit more than that, right? Especially when it's the Mob who are destroying people, and especially when the Mob and Slashers had some words in their second game, and it looks like the second biggest rivalry in the sport. So I want commentary to do a little bit better, because I like what you're trying to say, that the Slashers have improved, but you need to take a step back and realise that they've improved because they were playing the best team in the league, and the best team in the league was cooking them. So that does not imply that they will be good at taking on the best team in the league. Just consider that. But all in all, a good night of SlamBall action. I think some people would consider that first game of the night, Wrath Buzzsaw, to be one of the best games we've seen thus far. It was closely contested. There weren't many fouls given away. It was physical, but there was still some plays being played. And there were some great blocks. And then Tony Crosby II with just some incredible highlight dunks throughout the night. So a good night of SlamBall. Tonight we have Buzzsaw versus Lava in Game 1 and Griffins versus Slashers in Game 2. So that's unfortunate for the Buzz and the Slashers that they're having to play back-to-back nights, but it was going to happen for someone. How will this affect them? Will we see both of them in the main event again? Or is it going to be one of the other teams taking advantage of a tired team? I think Slashers Griffins is interesting to look at. I really want to see the Lava get a win. But I think if the Lava get a win now, the Buzzsaw are going to start to plummet down power rankings after starting really strong. So it's difficult because you don't want the Buzzsaw to look like they were pretenders in weekend 1. But the Lava have been a lot better than their 0-3 record would indicate. And you want to see them improve on weekend 2 a little bit. Griffin Slashers, really good defense from the Griffins, but their offense is really poor. We've got Adam Smith, who is one of someone who's a massive fan of league like me and is doing a lot of statistical analysis. And he's basically said that the Griffins' offense is coming from 4 players this season, and one of them scored 6 points total. So it's defense versus offense, because the Slashers are pretty good defensively, but nowhere near as good as Connor Hollenbeck at stopper. And on top of that, we've just seen that their offense was really cooking last night. And so can that continue into tonight? Those are tonight's games. This has been Bounce Off, the #1 SlamBall podcast worldwide. Let me know in the comments or on Twitter what you think about this analysis. If you would like to see videos of me breaking down what I'm seeing from the game, that's something I've been thinking about doing this coming week for some additional content. What do we think of Tony Crosby II? The statistical analysis seems to imply that he's not playing amazing, but he's definitely the league's Allen Iverson. He's doing really impressive stuff, and he's carrying a team of guys who are built around his style of play. What do we think about the Rumble? Are they improved, or are they definitely the worst team and it's not even close? Or do we think that there's hope for them? What do we think about the Buzzsaw? Like I said, are they pretenders? Are they not? And what do we think about the Wrath? Is it just that injuries are really hard to keep up with, or are my boys in blue looking a lot worse as the season goes on? You let me know. You get involved on Twitter at QUANTUM Roberts, on Instagram. Make sure you're interacting with all the SlamBall stuff. We've got good people out there. If you want to talk SlamBall, there's a link in my bio, or there's a link in the description to Lone Ranger's Big 3 Discord, which also has a section talking SlamBall. So if you want to talk live with people that aren't on Twitter, you can go there. And we also have a link to the stats page that SlamBall is using, and you can keep up to date on how all the games are going with live score tracking as well. So I've been Sam Roberts. This has been Bounce Off. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening if you're listening to us. Give us reviews, give us comments, give us interactions. Love SlamBall the way I do. It's so fun this far.